As motorcyclists, we all know how tricky it is to get footage of yourself riding, particularly if you're trying to do it on your own. So in this video, I'm going to share some tricks, tips, and ideas of how you can do it. In a few of my recent bike reviews, I've included footage of me riding where the camera is set away from the bike and you can see me and, more importantly, all of the bike in its entirety. I've had a few people ask me how I do it, so I thought I'd put together this video. The simple answer is I use a 360-degree camera on the end of a pole, and these have been a godsend, particularly for people like me who tend to spend most of my time filming or by myself. As I mentioned at the beginning, getting footage of you on the bike is always a difficult thing, and I used to go through the process of setting up a camera on a fence post or by the side of the road or in a field, riding away, riding past it, and then going back and collecting it, hoping that nobody in the meantime has wandered past and walked away with it. Not ideal. Now, although you don't obviously get the same kind of drive-by shots with a 360 camera, these do open up a lot of opportunities, and they are becoming much easier to use and much more fully functioned. The Insta360 One X2 is a great example of that. I could, of course, rattle on about the functions and features of this at great length, but I'm not going to. The whole idea of this video was to get this on the bike, capture some footage, then get the footage off of this, edit it so that you can get it out onto social media, and that's the intention. If you want to see a really in-depth review of this camera, its features and everything that it can do, then I suggest going and having a look at Potato Jet on YouTube. He's got an excellent camera videography channel. If you've not seen him before, go and check him out. I'll put a link in the end credits or up in the top corner here to his channel to go and have a look. What I want to concentrate on, as I say, is showing you just the basics of using this. So let's get outside with it on the bike and we can take it from there.
Okay, some blue skies, nice. So we've jumped out onto the beautiful Honda CB1000R. Just to give you a quick demo, I've not done anything flash in terms of the setup, but everything in this setup does come from the Moto bundle. So we've got the screw fix clamp on there, which is lovely and secure. It's got a ball mount on the end. This sprung ram style extension arm comes with it, and then there's a ball holder in the top with the screw stud that this camera screws onto. Now, because there are two camera lenses on this, it doesn't really matter too much where you place it, but you do have to consider the stitch line. It will film in two sort of 180-degree radiuses, so there will be a stitch line where it has to put those two together in post-production. So if you want to film yourself, for example, and you want to be the main part of the video, then it's probably best to have one of the lenses pointing towards you, because then you know you're not getting these stitch lines cutting you in half, and we'll look at that as we go further through, and you might see some examples of that. So that's just all on there, ready to go. I hit the power button on the side. It's already on 5.7K, 24 frames per second, 360 video, and so that is now ready to go. Hit one button of that, it will say starting recording, and then this little button on the bottom will flash red so that you know that it is in recording mode. Let's start this wee beastie up. Oh yes. Now, of course, one of the beauties of 360 cameras is you get both sides of the picture. So sometimes when you're out riding on the lanes, you find something that's interesting, and often, you know, I've come across herd of deer in the road and I've had a GoPro on filming me for a particular section, and by the time I stop and try and turn it around and get the footage, it's all gone. Obviously in the 360 it's capturing everything that's going on around it. So you can just select that in post-production, and as you'll see when we go later on to the editing process is non-destructive as well, so it pulls the files in. You can make the edits, change your viewpoint, all those sort of bits and pieces, but it doesn't alter the original raw footage. You can then output that. If you want to go back and make a different edit of the same footage, you can do that, but we can talk about that a little bit later on, because the sun's coming out. So let's get on and capture some footage.
Okay, so we've captured the footage, but what do we do in terms of getting it off of the camera and getting it edited? And at this point we can jump over to the office and I'll show you the next stages. Right, so let's do some editing, and we're using Insta360 Studio because it's the quickest and easiest way to do anything with the footage out of this camera. So let's open this up, and no, my cursor isn't normally that big. I've just enlarged it so that it's easier to see on the screen. So we'll open the Insta360 Studio, and this is your workspace that you'll be greeted with. Very simply, on the left hand side is your input, on the middle here is your preview pane, right hand side is for output, and then along the bottom is your timeline and certain effects and keyframing and all those sort of bits and pieces. So let's open one of the files from the card. And the first thing you notice is there's two types of file here. There's an LRV and a VID. The LRV is low resolution video, and this is what's used when you want to edit on your phone. What Insta360 have done is made a very small file size that you can use for editing, and then when you come to export that, what it does is it takes the detail from the edit and pulls through the full resolution file from here when you come to save the document. Now, for the purposes of this video, we're just going to be using the VID files, the full resolution ones, which are best to use in this piece of software. And you'll notice that it's got a bit of a weird naming convention, so it's quite straightforward once you get your head around it. The first digits are the date, so it's 2021-03, which is March, and the 15th, so it's year, month, day. Then there's an individual signifier number, and then there's a suffix after that which is relating to which lens it is. So it's either 00 or 10, so one of those will be the front lens, one will be the back lens, and there will be a corresponding file of that number, as you can see at the top here, 144029. That's got an 11 suffix, and that's the low resolution file. You don't need to open both of these. You can just click on one of those. It will show you a preview of what the footage is, and then when you open it, it will start playing automatically. So if you hit the space bar, that will stop the play, and you can see this is open here. We've got the preview, and this has opened both of those files, so you've got the output from both lenses together, and this is how it looks when it first comes off. You've got them laid side by side, so a little bit confusing. You can use this if you're going to import it into Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro and use the plugins to edit from there, because you can use the 360 controls from within those programs. But for the purposes of recording on here, we want to click on the free capture. What that does is it stitches the two together and gives us the ability to be able to click and drag and move it in any direction, so you get your full 360 video there. You can see the yellow timeline at the bottom here, so this is the length of video clip, and we've got various controls at the bottom here. So this one adds a keyframe, this one will delete a keyframe, this is the deep track function, we'll touch on that briefly, and then we've got our other options here like time shift and just normal trim control. So if you want to mark it as the start of your trim point, if you want to take a snapshot, you can just click on this button and it will take a screenshot of this particular frame for you to keep. You can see on the right hand side where for the export we've got various options around the stitching. I tend to leave it on normal and don't worry about anything else, but if you're using it with the lens guards or if you've been filming underwater, you've got different stitching options for you there. So essentially when you're editing, all you're trying to tell this piece of timeline is where the camera or which camera you should be using. Let's just go through this very simply then. Once you get the position that you want to start your footage from, you then click on the keyframe. You'll see it adds a little yellow dot in there to show you that there's a keyframe. Now if I press the spacebar to play again, it's going to lock the camera in that position. We're not moving at the moment, so you can't tell what's going on there, but trust me, it locks in that position. You've also got options here in terms of what kind of look that you want. So there's a fisheye option, which is kind of where we are at the moment in terms of editing. You've got the tiny planet, which you've probably seen when you see it looks like you're riding around on a very small planet. That's an option there. It's a good effect. It can be overused. It's a nice trick, but I use it sparingly. And if you want this sort of crystal ball effect, you've got that there. And then there's also this sort of flat plane that you can use, so you can zoom in and out and drag it all around. It tends to look a little bit stretched when you use that, so the fisheye is normally the easiest one to use because it gives you the best look. So obviously once you place the keyframe, if you change anything, it won't save unless you hit the keyframe again. So we've got that to where we want it to be. We'll press the space bar and we'll let that play through. And here you've got the control. So if I now want the camera to move around to point forwards, what I can do is stop the video at the point that I want that camera to reach, spin it round, add the keyframe, and there you can see you've got this movement here. So that's where we started, and you can see it just moves. It takes as long as that transition bar is to get to the point that we move. So if you want an instant snap back, then what you do is let it play a little bit, stop it, rotate it around, add your keyframe. So if we now go back to the beginning, you can see it's got that whole bar there that it's using to get to the new viewpoint, and then obviously there was hardly any space for the next one. Right, so that's it basically. You are essentially putting keyframes into the video to tell the software where it should be looking. Obviously you can move this around at any point that you want to during the footage, even while it's playing, but it won't make any changes unless you put a keyframe in. So if it's going to stay at the angle that that last keyframe button was pressed. We'll stop the footage there. If I want to maybe then look to the side or look down like that, that's a bit weird, but we can do that. Again, click the keyframe. So what this is going to do is go from the last keyframe where I was looking straight on, and over this period it's going to transition to where we are now. So we can have a look at that. So that's the last keyframe I changed, and you can see it's slowly moving. If you want to change the way that transition works, you can click on that button to highlight the yellow bar, and then you can do various options as to how you do that change and that transition. So there we go, we're rolling again. That's a terrible angle, so let's just change that back to one that looks more realistic. Put your keyframe in. Now if at any point you decide I don't like that change, you can go back to the keyframe, highlight it and delete it with that button and start again. It takes you back to the last place. So let's put that keyframe in. So this is what you do. You just go through the video putting those keyframes to get the look that you want. There are some quicker tools. So in this case, if you just want to track an object, it can be this object, it can be any object essentially in the video file, there is this deep track option here, which is really useful. So if I play this through, you'll notice if I'm going around a corner, because the camera's sitting at a fixed point, the bike will move around in the frame, and quite often it can go out of shot if you were to be going round a roundabout, for example. So let's scrub on forward. So here we go. So in this frame I'm going round a roundabout. Because I haven't changed the keyframe, it's looking at that particular point. I'm going to go almost out of shot there, and as I go round, the camera's still going to continue to point straight back. So as I'm going around the corner, I'm eventually going to disappear out of shot and come back into shot at some stage. Now you could go around and keyframe each one of those individually to get the exact look that you want, but often the quickest way to do it is to use this deep track. So let's get that in the position that I want, which is pretty upright. Here we go. Click on the deep track button, drag a box around what I want to track. I want to keep the target in the center, and then if you start tracking, the computer then does all the work for you. It keeps an eye on that person or whatever it is you've tracked, keeps it in the middle of the frame, and you don't have to go through lots of transitions of sort of mid-corner moving, setting marker points and going on and on and on like that. And then when you've got to where you want, you can hit stop tracking. So let's have a look at what's happening there. You saw what it was like when we didn't use the tracking. With the tracking in place, you can see it just keeps me in the middle of the frame. The software is doing all the work. That's a really, really good, useful tool in this for general riding. Now you can just do that for the entire footage if you want. If you want to just decide this is the look that I want and I want that for the entire shot, then you can just deep track the entire lot and that will be fine. Let's put a keyframe in there. We can run that through a little bit more, and if we want to go to, for example, the small tiny planet, then we can again hit the keyframe, hit tiny planet, and that is then going to take from that period of time to make that transition. So it then goes from there and it slowly goes into the tiny planet, just in time for the bridge. You can set the trim in and out as well. You can do it with these connectors here, but the easiest way is to just grab those and drag them in. So if we want to say, now that's enough, we don't want any more of that video, we can drag that to there. That's now going to be the entire length of our clip, but you notice this grayed out area is still here. That's because this is, as I said, is non-destructive, so we're not actually damaging the original file. All we're doing is telling the software what to do with that file to output it. So if we want to go back, we can come back in. Well, I'll show you that actually in a second. Let's quickly look at the export then. That's that yellow button in the top corner. It automatically defaults to 1080. You can change that to 4K if you want, but let's just leave it at 1080 for the time being. You can change the bit rate, the frame rate, although it's best to leave it in whatever frame rate it was recorded in. You've got a few formats for your codec, so H.264, the newer 265 or ProRes. You've got a few extras. You can enhance the color, remove the grain, and then you've got the video name and where it's going to be stored. So for this, let's just change that to test, and we will change this and we'll just put it on the desktop. Okay, so it's giving me an estimated size. You click OK, and then you get a little box showing you the status, and it will tick through, there we go, and show you how long you've got until it's done. We'll leave that to go. So you get a little fanfare to say it's done, and you get your final file size shown there. So we can close that down. Now, as I said, this is non-destructive, so if I want to put this back to normal, you can drag that back out to where you want to do. You can click on, it says trying desperately, there we go. You can click on the keyframe and delete those, or you can go up into edit and do clear all, and that will just clear everything out. If you want to clear anything that you've tracked, click on it, hit delete, and there we've got that raw file back exactly as it was, unchanged and unmessed with. So if you then want to go and do a completely different edit from the same piece of footage, you can do that and export that. So that's a really useful thing to know, and that's about it really. That's very simply what you get. It's a nice system to use. It's quite intuitive. It doesn't take long to get used to using it. You can, as I say, manually choose your keyframe points and click and move and click and move to get what you want, or use the deep track, and you can just play around with it. So let's just now open up the test one that we've played, and there you go. You can play that with all the changes that we've made to it.
One other quick tip again, when you're recording with two sources, I've got this camera going, I've just started that one. In the sight I'll just make 3 claps. That means then I'll get 3 spikes in the audio, 3 visual cues. I can line the video up in post-production, and it makes it the syncing all that much easier. You can do it automatically, but when the old-fashioned methods work, why not use those?
So there you have it. It's pretty straightforward. I used to think that 360 video used to be confusing, and it did used to be quite tricky to do. Getting that stitch working used to be a little bit of a nightmare, but cameras like this and the GoPro Max have made that much easier. The ability to edit this on the phone, I think, is really handy. So if you're out and about, You can record on this. If you want to do a quick edit on your phone, get it up to social media, stick it on Instagram, on your reels or your stories, then it's a fantastic method of doing that. So what's it going to set you back to get yourself one of these little babies?
How much is it? How much?
There are several discounts that are going on if you buy this camera at the moment. So there's a link in the description. If you want to have a look at that deal and see what it's all about, you can click on that. I will be open and honest with you and say that that is an affiliate link. So if you do buy a camera through that link, I get a little bit of a kickback here, which helps to support the channel, and it helps me to buy equipment like this so that I can improve my videos and bring you some of these tips. I would like to clarify that I'm not being paid by Insta360 to make this video. The views on what this camera can do and can't do are all my own. But as I say, this video is a pretty basic one. We might want to dig into it a little bit deeper at another time, and in that case, I will do that for you. So I hope this has been useful. As I said, I don't want to make this a really heavy tech review. This is about people that just want to get one of these, get out, do some filming, and hopefully some of the tips have been useful. If it's something you've been thinking about, it may well tempt you into playing around with a 360 camera. As ever, a click on the like button helps with the algorithm, but what's more important to me is if you want to see more of these reviews or you want to help the channel out, just hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell really does mean a lot to me. And all that leaves me to say is until next time, thanks for watching this video. Take care, ride safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.